Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Blueprint. Julian Yates learned about foundation when he was 12 years old, kneeling beside Gerald Butler in the crawl space of a foreclosed home in South Philadelphia. Gerald, a grizzled contractor with hands like weathered oak, had taken Julian under his wing after his parents died in a car accident. "Boy," Gerald had said, his flashlight illuminating rotted joists, "everything starts with the foundation. You build on something rotten, the whole damn thing comes down eventually." 20 years later, Julian understood that lesson applied to more than just houses. He stood in the kitchen of the home he'd just purchased. He'd purchased with $320,000 of his own money, watching his wife Candace scroll through her phone with the same disinterested expression she'd worn for the past 6 months. The evening sun cast long shadows through the windows, illuminating the custom cabinets he'd installed himself, the backsplash he'd spent 3 weekends perfecting. "We should celebrate," Julian said, setting down 2 glasses of wine. "We finally own a home." Candace glanced up briefly. "You mean you own a home? My name's on the deed. But let's be honest about who's actually established here." The comment landed like a punch, but Julian kept his expression neutral. This was new territory. When they'd met 5 years ago at a charity construction event, Candace Pearson had seemed different from her wealthy mainline family. She'd volunteered to help build homes for veterans, getting her hands dirty alongside him. She'd laughed at his jokes, been impressed by his work ethic rather than dismissive of his blue-collar background. "Both our names are on the deed," Julian said carefully. "That's what matters." "Sure." She took a sip of wine without looking at him. "Whatever helps you sleep at night." Julian had grown up in Kensington, where his father worked as a union electrician and his mother as a school cafeteria manager. After they died, drunk driver, wrong place, wrong time, he'd thrown himself into learning every aspect of construction. By 25, he was running job sites. By 30, he'd saved nearly every dollar he'd made, living in a modest apartment, driving a 10-year-old truck, building towards something. That something had been this house. And Candace. They'd married 3 years ago in a ceremony that Alfonso Pearson, Candace's father, had barely tolerated. Julian remembered standing at the altar, seeing the doubt in Alfonso's eyes, the tight smile on the face of Candace's brother Noel. But Candace had chosen him anyway, or so he'd thought. "I'm heading out," Candace announced, grabbing her Prada bag, a birthday gift from her father. "Dinner with Daddy and Noel at Luke Bernardine. I thought we were celebrating tonight." "You're celebrating. I'm having dinner with my family." She paused at the door. "Oh, and Julian? We need to talk tomorrow. About finances." The door closed before he could respond. Julian stood alone in the kitchen he'd poured his heart into, surrounded by the evidence of his work and the growing realization that his foundation might not be as solid as he believed. Chapter 2. The Declaration. The next morning, Julian was replacing a faulty outlet in the guest bedroom when Candace emerged from their master suite, already dressed for brunch in a designer outfit that cost more than his truck payment. "We need to talk," she said, her tone businesslike. "Sit down." Julian set down his tools and joined her at the dining table he'd refinished from a Craigslist find. She slid a folder across him. "I've been thinking a lot about our arrangement," Candace began, her fingers drumming on the table. "And I've realized I've been carrying this relationship financially and emotionally. It's not fair to me." Julian's jaw tightened, but he remained silent. "My father helped me see things clearly. You paid for the house, yes, but I've been covering most of our lifestyle. The vacations, the dinners out, the nice things. My income from a trust fund has been subsidizing your humble earnings. I make 6 figures as a site manager," Julian said evenly, "and I have access to millions. See the disparity?" She leaned back, crossing her arms. "So here's what's going to happen. From now on, we split everything 50/50ths. Every meal, every bill, every expense. I'm not carrying you anymore." The words hung in the air like a sledgehammer suspended over glass. Julian studied his wife's face, the woman he'd loved enough to build a life with, and saw a stranger. No, not a stranger. He saw Alfonso Pearson's daughter, Noelle Pearson's sister. He saw 3 years of her family's influence finally winning out over whatever affection she'd once felt. After I paid $320,000 for this house, Julian said quietly, "You want to split everything 50-50? The house was your decision. I wanted to rent in Society Hill, remember? But you insisted on building equity or whatever blue-collar wisdom Gerald taught you." Julian felt something shift inside him. Not anger. Anger was hot and chaotic. This was cold, calculated assessment. The same mental state he entered when surveying a job site, identifying structural weaknesses, planning solutions. "Okay," he said simply. Candace blinked. "Okay. 50-50. I agree." She'd expected resistance, maybe tears or anger. Her mouth opened, then closed. "Well, good. I'm glad you're being reasonable about this." Completely reasonable. Julian stood, gathering his tools. "I'll draw up a document. We'll both sign it. Everything 50-50 from this point forward." "Fine." She grabbed her bag. "I'm meeting Noelle for brunch. We'll discuss this more later." After she left, Julian sat in the silence of his house, their house, legally speaking, and pulled out his phone. He dialed a number he'd called 1,000 times over the years. Ricardo Donovan, attorney at law, came the familiar voice. "Rico, it's Jules. I need you to come over. Bring your legal pad." "What's wrong?" "My foundation's cracking. Time to assess the damage and plan a rebuild." Ricardo Donovan arrived 2 hours later, looking concerned. They'd grown up 3 blocks apart in Kensington, had each other's backs through juvie scares and job losses, through Julian's parents' death and Ricardo's fight through law school working nights at a warehouse. Julian laid out everything. The house purchase, Candace's changing behavior, her family's influence, and finally, this morning's ultimatum. Ricardo leaned back on the couch, his expression grim. "Man, I warned you about marrying into money. Different world, different rules. I love her, Rico, or who I thought she was." "I know." Ricardo pulled out his legal pad. "But love and law are different things. Let's talk reality. The house is in both names. Joint tenancy with right of survivorship. But you pay the entire purchase price? Do you have documentation? Wire transfer records, everything." Ricardo nodded slowly. "Pennsylvania is an equitable distribution state. In a divorce, assets get divided fairly, not necessarily equally. The fact that you paid for the house entirely with premarital funds could work in your favor. I'm not thinking about divorce yet. I'm thinking about documentation." "Smart." Ricardo met his eyes. "What's your play?" Julian stood, walking to the window, overlooking the backyard he'd landscaped himself. "She wants 50-50? I'll give her exactly that. But I'm going to document every single thing. Every repair I make, every hour I work on this house, every meal I cook, every errand I run. All of it. You're building a case. I'm building protection. Gerald always said measure twice, cut once. I'm going to measure everything, Rico." And when she realizes what 50-50 actually means, when she sees how much I've been contributing that she took for granted, either she'll wake up or you'll have everything you need for what comes next. Julian turned from the window. "Can you draft something for both of us to sign? A post-nuptial agreement acknowledging the 50-50 split she's demanding." Ricardo grinned. "I can draft something that'll lock her into exactly what she's asking for." "You sure about this?" "She said she's not carrying me anymore." Julian's voice was steel. "Let's see how she does carrying her own weight." Chapter 3. The Mask Falls. Over the next 2 weeks, Julian implemented his new system with methodical precision. He created a shared spreadsheet titled Household Expenses and Contributions that tracked everything down to the dollar. Groceries? Split 50-50ths. He started keeping receipts. Utilities? Split 50-50ths. He set up separate payment tracking. Household repairs? That's where things got interesting. "What is this?" Candace demanded one evening, looking at an invoice Julian had left on the counter. The kitchen faucet was leaking. "I fixed it. My labor rate is $85 an hour. Took 2 hours, plus parts. Your half is $195. Her face flushed. "You're charging me to fix our house." "Our house. 50-50, remember? I'm a skilled tradesman. My time has value." If you prefer, I can stop doing repairs and we can hire outside contractors. Of course, that'll cost 3 times as much. She stared at him like he'd grown a second head. This is ridiculous. This is fair. This is what you asked for. Over dinner that night, which she'd had to actually cook herself since Julian was now only handling his own meals unless she wanted to pay for his chef services, Candace's phone rang. Alfonso Pearson's name flashed on the screen. "Daddy, he's being impossible," she complained, shooting Julian a glare. "He's actually charging me for fixing things around the house. Can you believe that?" Julian continued eating his steak, cooked perfectly medium rare, while Candace's voice rose. "Yes, I know. You were right about him. Just trying to take advantage." She paused, listening. "This weekend?" "Yes, of course. I'll be there." After she hung up, she turned to Julian. "I'm spending the weekend at the estate. Daddy wants to discuss our situation. Your father wants to discuss our marriage. My father wants to ensure I'm protected from people who'd exploit me." Julian set down his fork carefully. "Protected from your husband who paid $320,000 for the house you're living in? A house that's half mine by law. Maybe you should think about that." After she stormed upstairs, Julian pulled out his phone and texted Ricardo. "Need to meet. Tomorrow." The next day, at a diner in Northern Liberties, Ricardo slid a folder across the table. "Did some digging like you asked. Alfonso Pearson's more interesting than I thought." "How so?" "His wealth comes from real estate development, but he's got a reputation. He's crushed 3 different business partners over the years. Buys them out at exactly the moment they're most vulnerable, always for pennies on the dollar. Guy's a shark. And his kids. Noel's a spoiled brat. Works for daddy's company in a made-up position. Never held a real job in his life. As for Candace..." Ricardo paused. "This is delicate, Jules. Just tell me." "She's been seen around town with Roman Connor. Investment banker, old money, exactly the kind of guy Alfonso would approve of." The information settled in Julian's chest like a stone. "Seen how? Lunch meetings that run long. Dinners at places she hasn't taken you to in months. Could be innocent. Could be..." Ricardo trailed off. "Could be exactly what it looks like." Julian stared at his coffee. "Alfonso introduced them at a charity gala 3 months ago. Right around when Candace's behavior changed, according to your timeline." Julian nodded slowly. The pieces were assembling into a picture he didn't want to see but couldn't ignore. "What else?" "The Pearsons have a pattern. Alfonso doesn't just crush business partners. He systematically isolates and eliminates anyone he sees as beneath his family. There was a guy, daughter's previous boyfriend before you. Middle class, worked in marketing. They destroyed his reputation in social circles, got him fired from his job using Alfonso's connections. Guy had to move to Pittsburgh to start over. Why didn't you tell me this before I married her? Would you have listened? You were in love, man. And honestly, I thought Candace was different. Maybe she was once." Julian rubbed his face. "So what's the play here? They want me gone, but they don't want a messy divorce that makes them look bad. They want you to walk away. Probably offering to buy your share of the house at a fair price that's way under market value. Make you feel like you're coming out ahead while actually getting robbed. And if I don't take it..." Ricardo's expression darkened. "Then they make things difficult. Alfonso has judges in his pocket, lawyers on retainer, connections that run deep. They'll drag you through a divorce that costs more than you can afford, all while Candace lives comfortably on trust fund money. Unless I have leverage." "Unless you have leverage," Ricardo agreed. "What are you thinking?" Julian pulled out his phone, showing Ricardo the detailed spreadsheet he'd been maintaining. "I've been documenting everything. Every contribution, every hour of work, every expense. But I need more. I need to know exactly what they're planning. You need to know if she's actually having an affair." "Yeah." Ricardo leaned back. "I know a guy. Private investigator, discreet, good rates. Want me to make a call?" Julian stared out the diner window at the city he'd grown up in, built a career in, dreamed of building a family in. "Make the call." That weekend, while Candace was at the Pearson estate in Gladwine, Julian went through their home office. He wasn't snooping. Everything he looked at was jointly owned, sitting in plain sight. He found credit card statements showing charges at expensive hotels where they'd never stayed together. Restaurant receipts from places Candace claimed she'd been working late. In the back of a drawer, he found a birthday card. The front showed 2 champagne glasses. Inside, in aggressive masculine handwriting, "To new beginnings and old money. Finally, someone who understands the finer things. RC, Roman Connor." Julian sat at the desk for a long time, holding the card, feeling the last pieces of his marriage crumble like termite-damaged wood. But underneath the hurt was something harder, sharper. He'd built his entire life from nothing after his parents died. He'd learned to be strong when the world tried to break him. The Pearsons thought he was just some working-class contractor they could push aside. They were about to learn what happened when you underestimated a man who'd built everything he had with his own 2 hands. Chapter 4. The Fine Print. Monday morning, Julian was waiting at the kitchen table when Candace returned from her weekend at the estate. He'd spent Sunday evening preparing documents with Ricardo's help, printing them on legal paper, arranging them in neat folders. "Good weekend?" he asked as she swept in, designer luggage in hand. "Fine. Daddy sends his regards." She didn't quite meet his eyes. "He wants to meet with you this week. Discuss our future." "I'm sure he does." Julian slid a folder across the table. "But first, let's make your 50-50 arrangement official. I had Ricardo draft a post-nuptial agreement. Everything divided equally, just like you wanted." Candace picked up the document warily. "What is this?" "Protection for both of us. It clearly outlines that all household expenses, maintenance, and contributions are split equally. It also includes a comprehensive list of everything I've contributed to the household over the past month, which you'll be reimbursing me for your 50% share." Her eyes widened as she read. "You're billing me for mowing the lawn? For cleaning the gutters? For fixing the garbage disposal? My labor rate is standard for the industry. If you prefer to hire outside services, that's fine, but they'll cost 3 times what I'm charging. I'm actually giving you the family discount. This is insane. This is fair. This is 50-50. Julian's voice remained calm, but his eyes were steel. "You said you weren't carrying me anymore. This document proves you never were. I've been contributing roughly $6,000 a month in labor and services to this household, not counting my share of bills. You owe me $3,000 for last month alone." Candace's face went pale. "I don't have that kind of cash just lying around." "Really? You spent $4,000 at Neiman Marcus last week. I saw the statement. That's different. That's my discretionary spending. And home maintenance is your shared responsibility. Sign the agreement, Candace, or we can get lawyers involved and make this much more complicated." She stared at him, and Julian saw the moment she realized he wasn't the pushover she and her family had assumed. Her jaw tightened. "I need to show this to Daddy's attorney." "Of course. Ricardo's contact information is on the last page. Have him call him with any questions." After she left for work, her trust fund-enabled consulting job that required maybe 10 hours a week, Julian texted the private investigator Ricardo had recommended. "How soon can you start?" The response came within minutes. "Already on it. We'll have preliminary report by Wednesday." Over the next few days, Julian watched his wife's frustration grow as the reality of true equality settled in. She'd always taken for granted that he'd handle household repairs, yard work, and maintenance. When the toilet in the guest bathroom started running, she called him at work. "Can you fix the toilet tonight? I'm working late on the Fishtown development. I can schedule you in for Thursday evening, $85 an hour plus parts." "Julian, this is ridiculous." "No. What's ridiculous is you demanding 50-50 but expecting me to donate my skilled labor for free. Hire a plumber if you don't want to wait or pay my rate. Should run you about $300 for an emergency call." She hung up on him. That night, Julian returned home to find Candace had attempted to fix the toilet herself. Water was leaking from the base, and she was standing in the bathroom looking furious and helpless. "Having trouble?" he asked from the doorway. "Just fix it." "Sure. That'll be $85 an hour, 2-hour minimum for water damage assessment and repair, plus materials." "I hate you right now. You hate equality. There's a difference." He turned to leave. "Let me know if you want to book my services. Otherwise, I suggest you call a plumber. But I'd shut off the water to that toilet first if I were you." He showed her where the shut-off valve was, free of charge. He wasn't completely heartless, and left her seething in the hallway. Wednesday evening, Julian met the private investigator, a woman named Jody Baird, at a coffee shop in Manayunk. She slid a manila envelope across the table. "Your wife's having an affair," Jody said bluntly. "Roman Connor, investment banker. They've been meeting at the Rittenhouse Hotel twice a week for the past 2 months. I've got photos, timestamps, credit card records for the room charges, which are on a card held by Alfonso Pearson, interestingly enough." Julian absorbed this information with outward calm, though something cracked deep inside him. Her father's paying for her affair? Looks like it. There's more. Jody pulled out another set of photos. This is from yesterday. Lunch meeting at Devon Seafood Grill with Alfonso Pearson, Noel Pearson, Roman Connor, and a real estate attorney named Morris Frederick. They're planning something. They're planning to push you out. I've got a source at Frederick's firm. They're drafting papers to pressure you into selling your share of the house. The angle is that since your name wasn't on the financing, because you paid cash, they can argue the marital asset should be liquidated and divided. But I paid for it entirely. Doesn't matter in their minds. They think you're just some contractor who got lucky marrying up. They're preparing to crush you legally and socially. Alfonso's already started putting out feelers about your business reputation. Nothing actionable yet, but he's laying groundwork. Julian stared at the photos of his wife with Roman Connor, her hand on his arm, the intimate way they leaned toward each other. What else do I need to know? Roman Connor's married. Wife's name is Lucia Day Connor. She's old Philadelphia money. Family goes back to colonial times. She has no idea about the affair. Roman's playing your wife while keeping his own marriage intact. Classic rich boy behavior. Does Candace know he's married? Hard to say, but I doubt it. The way she looks at him in these photos, she thinks this is real. Julian gathered the evidence carefully. Send me everything digitally too. Encrypted. Already done. What's your next move? I'm going to that meeting with Alfonso, and I'm going to let them think they're winning. Chapter 5. Structural Damage. The Pearson estate in Gladwine was everything Julian's childhood home in Kensington wasn't. Sprawling, immaculate, designed to intimidate. He pulled up in his work truck Thursday evening, noting Alfonso's Bentley and Noel's Tesla in the circular driveway. A maid answered the door and led him to Alfonso's study, all dark wood and leather and old money. Alfonso Pearson sat behind a massive desk, Noel lounging in a chair nearby with a smirk on his face. Candace stood by the window, arms crossed, not looking at him. Julian. Alfonso didn't stand or offer a handshake. Thank you for coming. You requested a meeting about my marriage. Hard to say no to that. Sit. Alfonso gestured to a chair positioned lower than his own, a deliberate power play Julian noted and ignored by remaining standing. I'll stand, thanks. Alfonso's jaw tightened slightly. Very well. I'll be direct. Your marriage to my daughter isn't working. The disparity in backgrounds, in education, in social standing, it's creating untenable strain. The disparity, Julian repeated. Interesting way to phrase it. I'm offering you a solution. Alfonso slid a folder across the desk. I'll purchase your share of the house for $200,000. That's a significant premium over your 50% stake at current market value. The house is worth $450,000 minimum. My 50% would be $225,000, and I paid $320,000 for it. Property values fluctuate. Noel interjected with a smug smile. That's just smart business. Julian looked at Candace. You're okay with your father buying me out of the home I purchased? She finally met his eyes. It's for the best. For both of us. Because of Roman Connor? The room went still. Candace's face drained of color. Alfonso leaned forward. Excuse me. Your daughter's having an affair with Roman Connor. You're paying for the hotel rooms. You all had lunch together yesterday with a real estate attorney to plan this conversation. Julian's voice remained conversational. Did I miss anything? You're delusional, Noel said, but his voice lacked conviction. Julian pulled out his phone, navigating to the photos Jody had sent. He held it up, showing the image of Candace and Roman at the Rittenhouse Hotel. These are from last Tuesday. I want to see Wednesdays. Candace made a small noise, somewhere between a gasp and a sob. Alfonso stood slowly. Those could be doctored. They're not. And here's the interesting part. Roman's married. Has been for 5 years. His wife is Lucia Day Connor. Old money. Probably someone you know socially. Julian pocketed his phone. Does Candace know that? Or did you think she could break up his marriage like she's breaking up ours? You son of a... Noel started forward, but Alfonso held up a hand. Sit down, Noel. Alfonso's voice could have frozen fire. He turned to Julian with new calculation in his eyes. What do you want? I want what I'm owed. I paid $320,000 for that house. If we're divorcing, I want $320,000 back. That's not how marital assets work. Then we'll let a judge decide. Pennsylvania is an equitable distribution state. I paid for the house entirely with premarital funds, and I've been documenting every contribution I've made to the household since Candace demanded 50/50ths. I've got a compelling case that I've been subsidizing her lifestyle while she complains about carrying me. Alfonso's eyes narrowed. You've been planning this. No, I've been protecting myself. There's a difference. Julian moved toward the door. Here's my counteroffer. We sell the house at fair market value. I get my $320,000 off the top as reimbursement for the down payment. Whatever's left over, we split. Candace can have the affair she wants. I get compensated for what I put in. Everyone moves on. And if we refuse, Noel challenged. Then we go to court, and everything comes out. The affair, Alfonso's involvement in funding it, the attempt to pressure me into a below-market buyout. It'll be messy. The mainline social scene loves scandal, from what I understand. Julian opened the door, then paused. Oh, and Candace? You might want to ask Roman about his wife. I've got her contact information if you need it. He left them sitting in stunned silence, walked out past the maid and the expensive art and the manicured gardens, and climbed into his truck with hands that only shook once he was alone. Ricardo called as he was driving back to the city. How'd it go? I show my cards. Maybe too early, or right on time. What happened? Julian recounted the meeting. Ricardo was quiet for a moment. You know they're going to come back harder now. I'm counting on it. Let them overplay their hand. Jules, Alfonso Pearson doesn't lose gracefully. You just backed him into a corner in front of his kids. He's going to retaliate. Good. Julian's voice was cold. The angrier he gets, the more mistakes he'll make. And I'll be ready. Chapter 6, The Inspection. The retaliation started Friday morning. Julian arrived at the Fishtown development site to find his crew standing idle and his site manager, Reuben Denton, looking grim. Boss, we got a problem. Building inspector showed up first thing, said we need to stop work pending a safety review. What's safety review? We passed inspection last week. Anonymous complaint. They're saying our scaffolding isn't up to code. Electrical work needs re-inspection. Whole 9 yards. This'll set us back 2 weeks minimum. Julian pulled out his phone, calling the inspector's office. After 20 minutes of bureaucratic runaround, the message was clear. Someone with influence had triggered a comprehensive review of all his current job sites. Alfonso Pearson wasn't wasting time. Ricardo confirmed it that afternoon. I made some calls. Word is Alfonso's leaning on every connection he has. The building inspector thing is just the start. He's putting out whispers that your work is substandard, that you cut corners, that contractors should think twice before hiring you. That's defamation. Prove it. He's doing it through intermediaries, at social events, nothing actionable. The man's been destroying people for 30 years. He's good at it. Julian sat in his truck outside the halted job site, thinking. The crew was getting paid whether they worked or not. He'd never short his guys, but the delays would cost him the completion bonus on this project. About $50,000 he was counting on. His phone buzzed. Text from unknown number. You should have taken a deal. This is just the beginning. Noel. Then another, from Candace. Daddy's attorney will contact you Monday with divorce papers. I want you out of the house by then. Julian made 3 calls. First to Gerald Butler, his old mentor, now semi-retired, but still connected in the Philadelphia construction world. Gerald, I need you to make some calls for me. Alfonso Pearson's trying to blackball me. Need people to know the real story. Already heard some rumblings. I'll handle it, kid. The old guard doesn't like mainline money boys thinking they run our industry. Second call to Jody Baird. I need everything you can find on Roman Connor. Business dealings, financial status, anything that explains why Alfonso would encourage his daughter's affair. I'll dig deeper. Give me 48 hours. Third call to Ricardo. File the divorce papers first. Monday morning. And include everything, the affair, the house payment, all our documented evidence. I want Alfonso dealing with our case, not driving the narrative. You sure? Once we file, there's no going back. There's no going back anyway. But I'm not playing defense anymore. That weekend, Julian documented everything in the house. Every upgrade he'd made, every repair, every improvement. He took photos, gathered receipts, created a comprehensive record. Sunday evening, he packed his essential belongings and moved them to Gerald's spare room. When Candace arrived home Sunday night, Julian was waiting at the kitchen table with 2 envelopes. "What's this?" she asked warily. "Divorce papers. I'm filing tomorrow." In this, he slid the second envelope over, is documentation that you're having an affair with a married man, that your father paid for your hotel rooms, and that you all conspired to defraud me out of my property investment. "See you in court, Candace." He stood to leave. She grabbed his arm. "Julian, wait. Maybe we can." "Can what? Work it out? You had your father try to destroy my business this week. You want me homeless and broke. That's not a marriage. That's a war. And I'm going to win it." Her eyes filled with tears, but Julian couldn't tell if they were genuine or performative. It didn't matter anymore. "Roman loves me," she said desperately. "We're going to be together. This was never going to work anyway. Roman's wife might have opinions about that. I sent her copies of everything yesterday. Certified mail." Candace's face went white. "You didn't." "I did. Affairs have consequences, Candace. For everyone." He walked out of the house he'd paid for, climbed into his truck, and drove away without looking back. Monday morning, Ricardo filed the divorce papers with comprehensive documentation. By Tuesday, the story had spread through Philadelphia's social circles. Not through gossip, but through legal channels that were becoming public record. Alfonso Pearson's attempt to control the narrative crumbled when his name appeared in court documents as having financed his daughter's affair. Wednesday, Jody called with her findings. Roman Connor's in trouble. His wife filed for divorce yesterday, and it turns out he's been running investment scams, using his family connections to find marks, promising guaranteed returns, then pocketing the money. The Pearsons aren't the only ones he's been playing. Are they victims of his schemes? Not yet, but Alfonso introduced Roman to several business associates who lost money. Once they connect those dots, Alfonso's reputation is finished. He backed the wrong horse. Thursday morning, Julian was back at the Fishtown site when Gerald called. "Kid, you need to see this." Gerald sent a link to a Philadelphia Business Journal article. Old money banker accused in investment fraud scheme. The article detailed Roman Connor's arrest, his pattern of targeting wealthy families, and prominently mentioned his affair with Candace Pearson while married to Lucia Day Connor. Alfonso Pearson was quoted, "My family had no knowledge of Mr. Connor's fraudulent activities or marital status." The quote made Julian laugh bitterly. They'd thrown Roman under the bus to protect themselves, but the damage was done. The Pearson name was now associated with scandal. Friday afternoon, Morris Frederick, Alfonso's real estate attorney, called Julian directly. "Mr. Yates, I'm calling on behalf of Alfonso Pearson with a revised offer." "I'm listening." "Mr. Pearson will agree to your terms. The house sells at fair market value. You receive your $320,000 investment off the top, and remaining equity is split. Additionally, he'll make a one-time payment of $100,000 for your pain and suffering, and he'll issue a formal statement that your construction work is exemplary." Why the sudden generosity? Because a prolonged divorce proceeding would be uncomfortable for everyone. Mr. Pearson wishes to resolve this matter quickly and quietly. Julian smiled. "Tell Mr. Pearson I'll consider his offer. I'll have my attorney contact you with my answer." After hanging up, he called Ricardo. "They're offering $100,000 to go away quietly. You gonna take it?" "Not yet. We got them on the ropes. Let's see how desperate they get." Chapter 7. The Revelation. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in watching a structure collapse from within. Julian stayed at Gerald's place, focusing on his work while letting the legal machinery grind forward. The building inspector's harassment mysteriously ended. Alfonso cutting his losses, and the Fishtown project was back on track. But the Pearson family's dismantling was just beginning. Monday of the third week, Candace showed up at Julian's job site. She looked terrible, dark circles under her eyes, designer clothes rumpled, none of the polished perfection she usually projected. "Julian, please. We need to talk." He sat down his level and nodded to his crew. "Take 15. Leading her to his truck, he leaned against the hood. "Talk." Roman was arrested. "Did you know? I saw the news. He was never going to leave his wife. He was using me, using all of us." Her voice cracked. "My father introduced us. He wanted me with someone like Roman, someone from our world. And I destroyed our marriage for a con man." Julian said nothing, just watched her process her choices. "I didn't know he was married. I swear I didn't know until his wife called me. She was so angry, Julian. She said I was just the latest in a long line. That Roman does this constantly, finds bored rich wives to entertain himself. You're not a wife anymore. We're divorcing." I know. Tears streamed down her face. "I'm so sorry. I let my father poison me against you. I let Noel mock you. I forgot that you're the only person who ever loved me for me, not for my last name or my trust fund." It was a pretty speech. Julian might have believed it once. "What do you want, Candace?" "I want to call off the divorce. Start over. Go to therapy. Make this work." "No, please. I made a mistake. You made 100 mistakes. You let your family treat me like garbage for 3 years. You demanded 50-50 while taking everything I contributed for granted. You had an affair. Your father tried to destroy my business and steal my house." Julian's voice stayed level, but his eyes were hard. "Those aren't mistakes. That's who you chose to be. I'll change. Maybe you will. For someone else, someday. But not for me. Not anymore." She collapsed against the truck, sobbing. Part of Julian, the part that had loved her once, wanted to comfort her. But that part was small now, buried under documented evidence and hotel receipts and 3 years of slow disrespect. "The divorce goes forward," he said quietly. "But I'll agree to your father's offer. $100,000 settlement, fair market sale of the house, my $320,000 back. We both move on. What if I refuse? What if I fight it? Then we go to trial, and everything becomes public record, including the conversations I recorded." Her head snapped up. "What conversations?" "Pennsylvania's a one-party consent state. I can record conversations I'm part of without telling you. That meeting at your father's house? Your 50-50 declaration? All recorded. All admissible in court." The lie came easily. He hadn't actually recorded anything, but she didn't know that. Her face crumbled. "You've been planning this the whole time." "No, I've been protecting myself the whole time. There's a difference." He pushed off the truck. "Sign the papers, Candace. Let's both salvage something from this wreckage." She left without another word. That evening, Ricardo called with unexpected news. "We got a problem. Or maybe an opportunity, depending on how you look at it." "What happened?" "Alfonso Pearson was arrested this afternoon. Securities fraud. Turns out Roman Connor wasn't just running his own schemes. He was working with Alfonso on some of them. The FBI's been investigating for months. Your divorce filing actually helped crack the case open. It created a paper trail they could follow." Julian sat down heavily. "Alfonso's going to prison?" "Looking likely. He's out on bail, but facing serious charges. The Pearson empire is collapsing. Their assets might get frozen during investigation, including the house. Potentially, it's in your name and Candace's, but if they can prove any of Alfonso's money went into it, and given that he was paying for her affair, there's financial entanglement. It could get complicated. What's our move? Sell fast, before anything gets tied up in federal proceedings. I've already contacted a real estate agent. We can list tomorrow, likely have offers within a week. The house is in a good neighborhood. Great condition thanks to all your work. Do it." The house listed Thursday and had 3 offers by Monday. Julian accepted the highest, $465,000. After real estate fees and closing costs, there would be about $440,000 to divide. His $320,000 off the top, leaving $120,000 to split with Candace. She gets $60,000 from the sale, plus Alfonso's promised $100,000 settlement that was now in jeopardy given his legal troubles. But Julian had one more card to play. Chapter 8. The Collapse. The final confrontation happened at Morris Frederick's law office, all parties present for the settlement conference. Alfonso Pearson looked diminished, his expensive suit hanging wrong, his confidence shattered. Noelle sat beside him, equally deflated. Candace looked like she hadn't slept in days. Across the table, Julian sat with Ricardo, calm and prepared. "Let's begin," Frederick said wearily. "Mr. Pearson has agreed to the settlement terms with one modification. The $100,000 payment will be structured over 5 years instead of lump sum, given current financial constraints." "No," Julian said simply. "Mr. Yates, given the federal investigation." "I don't care about the federal investigation. That's not my problem." Julian pulled out a folder. "But I do care about the complete picture. So let's lay out everything on the table." He slid documents across. "These are receipts for every repair, upgrade, and improvement I made to the house over 3 years. Total value, $84,000. Under Pennsylvania law, I'm entitled to reimbursement for improvements made to marital property with separate funds." Frederick scanned the documents, his face darkening. "This is quite comprehensive. I'm a contractor. Documentation is part of the job." Julian pulled out more papers. "These are logs showing my time contributions to household management, maintenance, and unpaid labor over 3 years. At standard contractor rates, that's an additional $127,000 in value I contributed beyond the purchase price." "You can't bill your wife for being a husband," Noelle sputtered. "Actually, in an equitable distribution state, when one party demands an accounting of contributions, which Candace did with her 50-50 ultimatum, the court can consider all contributions to marital property. I'm simply following through on what she requested." Ricardo leaned forward, enjoying himself. "We're prepared to argue that Mr. Yates is owed $320,000 for the original purchase, $84,000 for documented improvements, and a portion of the $127,000 in labor contributions. Call it $530,000 total." The room went silent. "That's more than a house sold for," Frederick said quietly. "Correct. Which means in a trial, Candace would likely receive nothing from the marital estate and might actually owe Julian money. However," Ricardo paused dramatically, "we're willing to settle. Julian gets his $320,000 purchase price plus the $84,000 in documented improvements, total $404,000. Candace gets the remaining $36,000 from a sale. The $100,000 settlement payment from Mr. Pearson is due in full within 30 days, or we proceed to trial where all of this becomes public record during a federal investigation." Alfonso's attorney whispered urgently in his ear. Alfonso's face was red, his hands shaking. "This is extortion. This is accounting," Julian corrected. "Your daughter demanded 50/50ths. I documented everything. She wanted fairness. Here it is." Candace stared at the numbers, the reality finally sinking in. She'd walked into a marriage with a man who'd built everything he had through hard work and careful planning. She'd assumed he was naive, simple, easy to manipulate. She'd learned too late that contractors built things to last, including their defenses. "There's more," Julian said softly. "I found something interesting while packing up the house." He pulled out a final document. "This is the original deed to the property. Turns out the previous owner was a company called Pearson Holdings, LLC. The house was originally purchased by your father 15 years ago as an investment property. He held on to it, waited until the market appreciated, then had it listed at exactly $320,000. Overpriced for a property that needed work, but priced perfectly to drain my savings." The room went dead silent. "You set this up," Julian said to Alfonso. "You bought this house years ago, waited until your daughter married someone you didn't approve of, then made sure we found it. Made sure I paid every dollar I had for it. It was a trap from the beginning." Alfonso said nothing, but his silence was confirmation enough. "So here's my final offer," Julian continued. "I take $404,000 from the house sale. That leaves Candace $36,000. Alfonso pays the $100,000 settlement in full within 30 days. And I keep quiet about this elaborate setup, because if this comes out during your federal trial, Mr. Pearson, it establishes a pattern of financial manipulation that won't help your case. Morris Frederick looked at his client. Alfonso looked at his daughter, seeing perhaps for the first time the wreckage his machinations had created. Finally, he nodded once, sharply. Agreed. Papers were signed. The marriage was officially dissolved. Julian walked out of that office, having recovered not just his investment, but his dignity and his future. Outside, Candace caught up with him on the sidewalk. Julian, wait. He turned, giving her one last moment. You really never recorded any conversations, did you? She asked quietly. No, but you believe I did. That tells you everything about your own actions. You knew they wouldn't sound good played back. I'm sorry. For all of it. You deserve better. Yeah, I did. But I learned something valuable. Never confuse someone's financial status with their character. Never mistake someone's polish for their worth. He looked at her directly. You had every advantage: money, education, opportunity. I had nothing but what I built. And in the end, I'm still standing. What will you do now? Same thing I've always done. Bill. He walked toward his truck. Good luck, Candace. I mean that. Figure out who you are without your father's influence. He drove away, leaving the Pearson family and their wreckage behind. Chapter 9. The New Foundation. 6 months later, Julian stood in the office of Butler Yates Construction, the company he'd formed in partnership with Gerald. The old man had kicked in his reputation and remaining contacts. Julian had invested his settlement money. Together, they were building something solid. Got another contract, Gerald called from his desk. Luxury condo development in University City. They specifically requested us after hearing about the Fishtown project. Julian smiled. We're booked through next spring already. That's what happens when you do good work and treat people right. Word spreads. Gerald looked at his young partner with pride. Your daddy would be proud, kid. You took a beating and came back stronger. The door chimed. Ricardo walked in with coffee and news. You're going to love this. Alfonso Pearson was sentenced this morning. 7 years federal prison. Restitution of $12 million to his victims. And Candace. Last I heard, she's working a real job for the first time in her life. Some marketing firm in Center City. No trust fund access. Everything's tied up in restitution. No L2. They're learning to live like the rest of us. Julian felt no satisfaction in their downfall, but no guilt either. They made their choices. He'd made his. His phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Mr. Yates, my name is Tarang Nguyen. I'm a friend of Ricardo's. He mentioned you might be free for dinner sometime. No pressure, but I'd love to meet the man who built that beautiful renovation in Fishtown. Julian stared at the message, feeling something unfamiliar. Possibility. Ricardo grinned. I might have mentioned you to a friend. She's an architect. Self-made, smart, no family money. Thought you two might have things in common. You're matchmaking now. I'm networking. Whether it becomes more is up to you. Julian typed a response. I'd like that. How about Saturday? The reply came quickly. Perfect. Looking forward to it. He pocketed his phone and looked around the office, small but growing, filled with plans and blueprints and the smell of fresh coffee. Outside the window, Philadelphia spread out in the late afternoon light, full of projects to build and lives to rebuild. Gerald was right. Everything started with the foundation. Julian had learned that lesson at 12 years old, had forgotten it during his marriage, and had relearned it the hard way. But now he understood it completely. You couldn't build anything lasting on someone else's money, someone else's approval, or someone else's expectations. You had to dig down to bedrock, put in your own time and sweat and sacrifice, and build from there. Candace had wanted 50-50, thinking it would prove he was using her. Instead, it had proven exactly the opposite, that he'd been carrying far more than his share all along, and she'd never even noticed. The irony wasn't lost on him. That evening, Julian drove past the house he'd once owned. New owners now, a young couple with a baby. They'd kept most of his improvements, added some of their own. Through the kitchen window, he could see them cooking dinner together, laughing about something. It was a good house. It deserved a better foundation than the one he and Candace had tried to build. Saturday came, and Julian met Tara at a cafe in Rittenhouse Square. She was practical, funny, asked detailed questions about his work that showed genuine interest. No designer clothes, no family estate, just a woman who'd built her career through talent and persistence. "Ricardo says you recently went through a divorce," she said over coffee. "Is that a problem?" "Depends. Are you looking for revenge, a rebound, or something real?" Julian appreciated the directness. "Something real. Eventually, when I'm ready." "Good answer." She smiled. "I'm not in a hurry either, but I like meeting interesting people. And anyone who can do a complete renovation in 4 months while dealing with a divorce is definitely interesting." They talked until the cafe closed, then walked through the city as lights came on. Julian told her about growing up in Kensington, about Gerald and Ricardo, about learning that the best things in life were built, not given. She told him about her family's immigration from Vietnam, about working through architecture school, about learning that in America, you could build anything if you had the skill and the will. When they said goodnight, she squeezed his hand. "Let's do this again. I'd like that." Driving home, Julian realized he was smiling. Really smiling. Not the grim determination he'd worn for months, but genuine contentment. The Pearsons had tried to break him. They tried to prove he was nothing without their daughter, their money, their approval. Instead, they'd proven exactly the opposite. He'd come out of the wreckage with more than he'd lost. Not just money, but self-respect, clarity, and the freedom to build a life on his own terms. 6 months ago, Candace had looked at him and said she wasn't carrying him anymore. She'd expected tears, arguments, capitulation. She hadn't expected what happened after that. She hadn't expected him to be strong enough to walk away, smart enough to protect himself, and patient enough to let her own actions destroy her. In the end, that was the truest form of victory. Not crushing your enemies, but simply building something better while they collapsed under the weight of their own toxicity. Julian Yates had learned to build foundations when he was 12 years old. At 32, he learned to build them again after they'd been destroyed. At 33, he was ready to build something that would last. And this time, he'd make damn sure the foundation was solid all the way down to bedrock. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.